Hello, my name is Thomas and I like painting and printing 3D prints. I want to first start off by giving a huge shout out to everyone on Reddit who commented and said all the nice things about my paintings and the postings that I made. I'm hoping that this video will answer a lot of questions that I was getting in the comments, and I hope that I can kind of teach you guys on how I paint. And if you guys like it, then I'll continue to do videos like these. So today we're going to be painting Kratos from God of War. I found this file on a website that I ended up finding out later does not pay the true artist when you purchase the file. I will leave where I purchased this file below, but I will also leave credit to the true artist that I found online. To start, I paint everything with a black coat of acrylic paint. No primer, just black. Paint everything black that you see that is gray, aside from maybe the joints. While you're painting everything black, I will go ahead and mention that anything that I use in this video is going to be linked in the description below. I try to save as much money as I can on stuff. I know with resin printing it can kind of be expensive, but at least with your paint supplies, you don't need expensive stuff to make beautiful artwork. So I get all my stuff from Walmart usually, or like a Joann's or Hobby Lobby or Michael's. Any of those really, you can buy the paint that I use for pretty cheap. And then brushes, nothing special. So I'm going to paint his boot here. I kind of want to start out by making dark brown and then painting the areas that I think will have a shadow of dark brown. And then what we'll do is come back and we'll dry brush on a lighter brown, or we may not mix anything at all. I use nutmeg brown. We may not mix anything at all and just kind of paint on the highlights. That way you guys can see dry brushing. Dry brushing is going to be a huge key factor in this video. So if I ever say dry brushing, just know that you're going to use that same technique on virtually most of the piece. To kind of give you a description of what dry brushing is you kind of want just very little paint on the brush. You want your surface of whatever you're painting on to be dry, completely dry, whether you dry it with a hair dryer or air dry, you want it dry. And then you're going to want to paint very lightly perpendicular to the wrinkles in like clothing or to different types of texture. You want to paint perpendicular. That way the high points of the 3D model will catch some of that paint, and then it will look like highlights, whereas the base coat that you painted will look like shadows, as you can see here. This technique will make your 3D models pop way more than they ever have in the past. Next, I kind of want to separate some of the browns, so I'm going to make a reddish tinted brown and paint whatever this flap thing is on his shoe. Someone can help me identifying what that is, but I paint this with a dark base coat of red, and then I'm going to come back and paint a light red over the top of it using dry brushing. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and brown. Again, we want to separate some of our browns in the boot. That way it doesn't look like one glob of brown. And I'm going to paint some of this very textured area of his pants in a yellow brown. And I'm just going to dry brush over the top of the black. I'm not going to paint it a base coat. I didn't necessarily think that there was a need for it. So this is what it's going to end up looking like. Now I use sort of a lighter brown with a little bit of white and a lot of brown, and then I paint these straps that go around his shins, and then I'm going to come back with a even lighter brown using a lot of white and a little bit of brown and paint in some highlights using dry brushing. Another key factor that will make your prints pop is going to be stitching, like what I'm painting here. Just lightly go over that with a light brown, something that has a lot of contrast, and it'll make your print look so much better. So now go over and grab the Leviathan Axe. We're going to paint that to make it look very realistic. First, we grab this silver paint. We're going to paint the entire blade in silver. Make sure that you get down in those etching marks too, because when we come back and paint a darker black over the top of it, you'll be able to dry brush over that and the etching will remain shiny. Now the wooden part of the axe, I paint entirely dark brown, and then I come back with a lighter brown and then dry brush the entire wooden area, and you'll end up with something looking like this. But wait, my hand has reminded me that I forgot to paint the leather strappings around the axe. To do that, we're going to make a dark red and paint the entire strap in dark red, and then we're going to come back with just regular red and dry brush highlights across the top. Now you should get something looking like this. This seems like it would make for a pretty cool keychain, if I do say so myself. Now it's time to move on to Kratos' pants. I start by painting his underpants, and I'm going to be painting those in a dark brown and then coming back with a little bit more of a lighter brown and dry brushing over the top of those. So nothing too special there. Next, we're going to move on to the leather that's on the back of his butt. We're going to paint this in a dark brown first and then a nutmeg brown. The pants I used like a yellowish brown. We want to make sure that those two browns are separated, so only use the nutmeg brown on the leather on the back. Now these tassels that come off of him, they're going to be red, so just like we did at that little flap on the bottom of the boot, we're going to paint these dark red and then come back with just regular red as a dry brush. I feel like this thing is really coming together. Hopefully you feel the same way about yours as well. If you have any questions so far, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to do my best to answer. There's a lot of stitching on this leather, so make sure that you hit that with a light brown. It'll make this thing really pop. Now use this gold here to paint the belt buckles. That shimmer will kind of give it a bit of a more realistic type look. Now is the time where you hold up Kratos' thunder thighs and pat yourself on the back for the job well done. I painted his pouch off screen. All I did, same method as the tassels, dark red and then a little bit of a lighter red going over the top. Next up is the head, Mimir. The rope on his head I've broken like 8 times now, so if you're painting along with me and you haven't already broken this, please be careful with this piece. This thing will not stay on. With Mimir, I took a dark brown and painted his entire face, and then I dry brushed on a skin tone color, mixing white, brown, and some red as well. I then painted his entire beard in dark gray and then came back with a very light gray and dry brushed his beard as well. I forgot to cover this, but I ended up going and painting his horns in like a muddy yellow with brown and yellow, and then I painted the rope in another muddy yellow, and then I painted his eyes on, which are gold and black. But enough of him, let's back to our main character. I painted Kratos' base skin tone as a mixture of brown, red, and white to get what you see here. And then I come back with a much brighter skin tone using a lot of white, because Kratos wears his wife's and daughter's dead ashes on his skin, so he has a more deathly appearance, which is why his skin color is going to be much paler. It's important to note here that I do all of my skin tones at one time, because usually when you do skin tones, you're going to have to mix colors to do it. And so it's important to make a lot of that color in order to cover all of the skin tones. You don't really want to have to mix up another skin tone color to try to match the first one that you had. So what I try to do is paint all my skin tones at the same time. That way I have the same tint of skin tone throughout my entire piece. Once you've painted all of the skin, then you can start on Kratos' beard, which I started by painting a dark brown on. Come back in after that with your nutmeg brown and paint on his beard by dry brushing. If my hair would get out of the way, you could probably see me paint on some pinkish tin skin color for his scar across his eye, which, fun fact, he got from Ares. What I'm doing now is actually painting in his old man gray hairs. I did this because I felt like that the dry brushing of just the regular brown kind of gave it a 2D effect. So I wanted to add a little bit more detail by lightly hitting his beard with a few grays. After very carefully painting in his eyes, it is time to start on that famous red tattoo. All I use to paint his tattoo is just the regular red. It is important here though to use a square shaped brush, one that's relatively flat. The reason for that is because you can get straighter lines when creating this tattoo. If you use a round brush, you might struggle with the edges a bit and not have such sharp points. Now it's time to paint that black fur that's on his piece of armor on his chest. What I do here is it's already painted black, so I just come back with like a dark gray and dry brush across the top of it and hit highlights to kind of make it look a little bit more realistic. The leather shoulder piece, I start by painting a dark brown and then come back with the nutmeg brown and very lightly paint over the top of it. You want to try to capture each one of those squares the best that you can, because that's really going to want to capture detail when someone's looking at it. So this is something actually pretty important. As you can see, there's a gap right here in his neck where his head and his torso meet. That's not good. We want to make sure that we patch that up. So the way that I do patching is by taking clear UV resin and then using a paintbrush to kind of blend it in to the surrounding areas so that it's not so bumpy when it dries, or when it hardens, I should say. Then take the black light. You want to zap that thing until it hardens. It shouldn't take very long because this is a thin layer of resin. I typically try to leave it on there for like 20 seconds or so. Probably good after that. And then I just paint right over the top of it with the skin tone to cover it up. If the gap is too big and you want to save some of your clear resin, I use this spackling compound to kind of shove into the crack. Once I get it in there, then I come back with the UV resin over the top. That'll save your UV resin usage, and then also spackling is pretty cheap, so use it for the volume purpose. Now that is smooth as a very ripped old man. Now it's time to move on to the rocks, where we paint the entire thing black just like we did everything else, and then we're going to paint it all in dark gray, and then we'll come back and dry brush a lighter gray over the top of it. Later I end up coming back with a light brown gray and end up kind of painting on what seems to be like dirt to kind of give it a unique effect. Once you get all the rocks painted, now it's time to move on to the larger base. This piece, I just painted the entire thing black, then in dark brown. Then you're going to come back with a nutmeg brown, just your no mixing, just your regular brown, and kind of dry brush across the top of it. Once you get something looking like something that came out of the backside of a cow, then you're going to come and grab like a lighter brown and dry brush even lighter than you did on the nutmeg brown and dry brush that entire thing. Now we better not forget the Blades of Chaos. This is one of the most iconic weapons for the God of War. So we're going to be using the gold and silver that you see here. Paint this entire blade in gold, and then just like we did the axe, we're going to come back and paint like a black over the middle part to kind of give it sort of a black oxidation look. And then we'll do gold across the etching on the skull that holds the blade in place. And after doing that, we'll come back and we'll take a red and do some very fine paint work in that etching on the blade to make it look like it's glowing a bit. Now that's all that's left to do is just glue all this together and show you guys what we made. Again, I will leave links in the description below of everything that I use in this video, so feel free to go click on those. I hope you guys like this. If you do like it, leave a like. That tells me that you guys want me to make more videos like this. If you would like to see the glamour shots that I do for this piece, I will leave in the description my new Instagram, as well as my link to my Reddit as well. You can go check out some high quality pictures of this model. So if you have any questions or anything like that that I didn't cover, feel free to comment. I do read those, so I will try to get back to you. If I don't get back to you, then I'll try to answer that question in the next video. So anyways, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it, and happy painting. Thanks.